And for me, this is the most boring part. It's now over because all bezels are the same. There's no creative process in this except getting to the creative process. So we're going to dry it out a little bit, come in with our little hand shears and take off all the excess. And I like to do it just a little snip at a time rather than try to go around the corners and take it off as one piece. All right, that looks pretty good. Now, come in with the coarse file and basically trim up all of our sides. And I don't know if you can see that, but what I like to do is start with a trim all the way, with it polished up all the way across, and then work my way around. But you got to be real careful because you don't want to kiss this top edge. You just want to stay away from it as much as possible. All right, that's pretty good. Notice that there's still a lot of garbage here. You know, I didn't take it all the way to polish. Well, because I don't want to affect this top edge of the bezel. We'll come back in later and do that. From here, from about halfway down is what I mostly concentrated on. It looks like I got just a little bit more here. All right, that's pretty good. And then we can come in and do it with a fine file just to kind of get rid of all the marks. That looks good. So now let's try it with the stone. Oh, it's the right direction. But notice that the stone or the bezel has gotten a little bit smaller. So what I can do, come in with a round pair of pliers and just kind of open the bezel back up because I've been tweaking on it. Open it back up a little bit and the stone will fit better, and it's just a little shy of fitting right in that corner. And what I can do once I get ready to set the stone is go ahead and just take a sanding board and just round that off a little bit and it'll pop right in. So there's the stone, there's the bezel. The boring part is over. Now comes the design. And I have no idea what I'm going to do. And that's what makes it interesting, is I get to play a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up with, here's that piece of metal. Oh, here it is. Oh, let's see. Okay, here's what we've got. Can you see that? Just barely. Let me move back a little bit. There we go. Here's what we've got. And I think what I want to do is double this pattern, stone, metal. So something like, maybe something like this. And notice I'm making it bigger because by the time I dome it, it becomes smaller. So we're going to cut that out, and probably with the big shears. Let me take you over there. All right, so drop it in the shear, cut our line. Oops, we got just a little bit off there. There we go. Cut our other line. And we got ourselves kind of a half moon. Let's take it over and play with it a little bit. Put it on the trusty dapping block, and let's make sure we're going the right direction. Probably doesn't matter that much. I'm going to go this direction. Yeah. And I have a plastic headed dome that I made. Well, I actually made these, produced these, I don't know, 20 years ago. So that creates just a little bit of a dome. Okay. Actually, I want more of a dome. And that's probably too much, but I'm going to do it anyhow. No, actually, that's not too bad. I like it. Sits up just a little higher than this side here, but I think, and it's a little bit longer than I want it to be, but I think that's going to be okay just like it is. Let's take it over to the other side of the bench. All right, so we've got ourselves a little dome going. We've got ourselves the other side of the design. What I need to do now is I need to flatten this bottom edge. And this is where this part of the design will get shorter, is because it's pretty ragged there, and to flatten it we're going to take off a fair amount of material. So that said, let's take off some material. And actually this file's not going to do it. Let me come back. All right, well, we got a little bit bigger file from out in the machine shop, just because we can. Let me get some of the steel off of this file. The last thing I want to do is contaminate my drawer with steel filings. So now I think we've got something. Yeah, see, it's touching there and there and there and there. And then the rest of it has to get down to that. So we're going to be working this for a little bit. Okay, I don't know if you can see it. I'll see if I can get a reflection for you. But there's a full flatness all the way across there. So we take it to the next step, and the next step is find a piece of 24 gauge. Here we are. All right, the next step is to cut this someplace in this general area. And trim that sucker all the way across. Take off our excess. Always leaving a little extra space. Something like that. And we'll go back. Little steel wool, close that drawer, and we're going to clean it with steel wool. Put our piece on there. That looks pretty good. All right. Over to the welding table, and a little flux as usual. Fire it up, and this is the first operation on this particular weld, so it's going to be what? Hard solder. Yes. Warm everything up. And as it comes to temperature, drop our solder in place. Now notice the top is in temperature, but the bottom isn't. So you're never going to get the solder to go. The solder is only going to go to the top. So we have to kind of preheat the bottom a little bit. In fact, it might even be better to put it up on top of a platform. And that way we're not having to heat up the brick. And I just drop a blob of solder in there just to kind of let me know when the solder wants to melt. Someday it'll melt. There it goes. And that looks pretty good. Cool it off. And back to the bench. Okay, well, without doing another thing to this outside edge, I mean, I could trim it off, but no use at this point. We're gonna trim off the inside edge and see what we can come up with. But in order to do that, we're gonna take it over to another piece of equipment and do it from there. Okay, so we're gonna get a radius by using this little guy here. All right, well, it's the next day and we're ready to continue with this process. Kick some of that dust off into the drawer. Now, you saw me go through with the grinder yesterday, but not everybody has one of those grinders. In fact, nobody has one of those grinders but me, because I made it. But you could just get a half round file and go in and do the same thing. In fact, we're going to kind of trim it up and make sure that we're good. So, we've got that. Now, what we need is a little piece of silver that'll fit the length of that, and this looks like this one's going to do that. And so we straighten it out a little bit and give it a little arch. And that actually looks pretty good. A little bit more right in here. A little less arch. And I'm gonna square this up because it looks like it's gotten tweaked. All right, let's see what that looks like. Now it needs a little more arch. And that looks pretty good. I guess I need my glasses. All right. And it looks like we need just a little bit right here. Now when we want to get into specific bends, we get the pliers out, and that way we get just the right bend. And I'm thinking just a little bit more right there. And right here. And that looks pretty good. Look on the other side, make sure we're good there. Oops, look at that, we're not. Okay. So we'll just make just a little bit of a bend right there. And that should do it. That looks pretty good. And remembering that the metal, as it comes up to temperature with the solder, and the solder gets in the joint, oftentimes the metal will kind of slump into the joint. So you don't have to be super accurate, but you know, you want to get it so that it's close to touching in all directions. That looks pretty good. And that's a little bit far away right there. So we'll bring it back. And I'm seeing there's a, yeah, look at that. I didn't quite get that. So we need to get all the way down so that both joints have a nice smooth contact area. Otherwise you end up with a hole. And you don't want a hole. Now they're making contact. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And that looks pretty good. Now let's see what we got. All right, we want to come back here just a bit. I think we got something, at least there. And there too. Yeah, maybe just a little bit more there. Flip the other way. There it is. Yeah. Now you can see that it's doesn't quite reach the edges, but if you look here closely, you're going to see we're going to trim this back to about there. So, and this one back to about there, so that, you know, there's plenty of room for it to reach the edges. Now let's remember which way we're going to go. Yep. And I forgot to steel wool this. So we're going to kind of come over on the side here a little bit. And notice that I closed my drawer, because the last thing I want is a bunch of steel wool dust in my scrap drawer. There we go. Let's go over to the welding table. So we need to have this stand up, and we definitely don't want to squeeze on it at all. So I just barely set it inside of the crotch of the tweezers. And let's drop this in place. Well, actually, let's put some flux on it first. Okay. Up. Come on. We'll get one of these days. And I'm guessing, no, that looks pretty good. Let's spin it around and have a look at the other end. And that looks pretty good. Okay, and I think what we want to do is go this way just a little bit more. Somewhere in that general area. And so this is our second operation on this particular piece of material. So we're going to want to use medium solder. And it's all about where you point the flame of the torch. I mean, you can point it down or you can point it up, and I'm kind of at a little bit of a kitty corner angle. Notice how this is starting to get hot, so I rotate it down so I heat up the tweezers a bit and the other piece of metal. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up into the corner here and just melt a piece of silver right there. And then I'll know when that's going to start to take. Come on, baby. There it goes. All right, it's starting to take there. And let's come over here and do the same thing. And it's taking there. Now what we're going to do is flip this upside down because it's in good and solid. Oops. Maybe we're going to flip it upside down. There it is. It's not going anywhere. Now we got a bit of a gap right there. That's not good. Okay, so here's what we do. Take our copper tweezers, warm that beast up, get it all soft and easy to manipulate, and then just come in and bring it in a little closer. Is that good? No, it's not good. Alright, that's not going to work. Alright, let's do a little bit more. We've got some nice heavier pliers here we can grab with. Warm it all up. There we go. See how that just pulled right in? Now let's make sure we haven't popped out over here. Yeah, we're looking pretty good. Okay, let's put it back on its face. Get a little bit more flux because we heated that up for a period of time, and sometimes the flux will burn off. Get our medium solder. Little test amount right there, and when it starts to flow, there it goes. Put some more in, put some more in, and we've got it. That looks pretty good. Do the other side, and since it's already pretty well preheated, I'm not going to have to do too much to get it. And there it is. Make sure this side didn't pop loose or anything. looks good. All right. Okay, so we've got a, what does that look like? Kind of a Tyrannosaurus, you know, one of those dinosaurs backs. So anyhow, you come in and just trim off the excess, but you got to be real careful because you don't want to torque the material that you're going to leave. It's okay to torque the material that you're taking off, but and especially as we get to this other part, this part here is no big deal.
I've been waiting for you.
Where was it? Oh, I'm sorry.
Because I can't start my practice, so you come there.
I am such a bad husband.
I don't want to be interrupted.
Oh, man. Okay, I'm coming right now.
I'm not leaving till you come.
I promised her that I would work on her temple for a little bit this morning and totally spaced it out. Okay, we'll see you back in a few minutes. All right, so we've trimmed off. We left a little bit there because you don't want to trim it all the way back because you don't exactly know where that contact is going to be for the two pieces. So, leave a little bit. And in silver, it takes a few seconds to trim it back with a file. Now, we're at this place here where we got to get these off. But if I cut it with the scissors, well, I could cut it way back here without it tweaking too much. But you can see how it tweaked just a little bit. And what will happen is if you get it too close to that edge, it'll tweak over and pull the design over with it, and then so you'll end up with a little ripple there. So you don't want that, and probably the best thing to do is just saw it off. I mean, it takes a little bit more effort, but it's well worth it because you end up with a nice smooth surface at the end rather than a bunch of odd angles. So I just gotta come in. And you can see it goes pretty fast.